In the Chapter 3 assignment, you're going to create a mock-up for potential investors of your new idea for an app. Now, Animate is actually really good at making apps for all devices, whether they are iOS, which is iPhone devices, or even Android devices, and anything else in between. So whatever you've heard about Adobe Animate not being able to work with mobile devices, that is absolutely not true. That was only about the Flash plugin, and we'll talk more about that in future lecture notes. So anyway, in Adobe Animate, what you're going to create with this is you're going to create mockups. None of this is animated. You're going to create it absolutely from scratch. So make sure you read the directions and view the check brick, and it's going to talk to you about what size you should make your particular stage. We are designing for an iPhone 6S. So we need to make the stage size 750 pixels by 1334 pixels. That's the standard size of an iPhone 6S. And again, you can flip that size to be landscape or portrait orientation, whatever you need it to be. And you're going to create this mockup that is a visual representation of what this app could look like for potential investors to invest in. So let's say you have this big idea for a new app. One of the ideas that I created in my own example is the beam predictor, and it's for people who are really kind of coffee connoisseurs, and they're starting to get into, the rare types of coffee, the foreign coffee, the different moods that a coffee can put you in, the different flavors coffee can put you in, the different flavors of coffee that you maybe haven't tried before. So anyway, this particular app is going to ask people kind of what they're feeling that day, and then it's going to recommend a specific coffee bean for them. So for this idea, we just want to create an actual mock-up. So for the mock-up, you're just using pictures and shapes and text to show what this would look like. So in the first frame, notice that I have a folder called Home Screen. So this is what the app would first look like when it opens up. Remember that you need to have an image somewhere in this app mockup. It doesn't have to be on the home screen, it can be on the internal screen. And you also need to create a hierarchy of text, meaning we need to be able to tell the difference between the title of the app and the subtitle that kind of explains what the app does. So in this instance, I used a picture on the home page, and I got this picture from unsplash.com. You can also look through other areas like Flickr Creative Commons, pexels.com. There are a lot of places out there that have images that you can use for free for any reason. So I usually use unsplash.com because they have really great photos. They don't have a lot of photos on everything, but they do have quite a few that you can get inspiration from. So when you download a photo, you pick the photo, and then you can't just right click and choose Save As. You actually have to click on Download, and once it does, it'll download into your browser and go into your Downloads folder, and then you need to organize it from there. So that picture is actually really massive. It is 6.7 megabytes, and most of them are super, super high definition like that. And you can't really have that working in your project. It's just going to be too massive. So what I would recommend is that you open up your favorite photo editing program, whether it's a basic one that you can find online for free, or something like Photoshop that comes with the Creative Suite if you have the entire Creative Suite. And what I would recommend is that you go to Image and choose Image Size and change it to fit at least the width or the height of the image size we're going to use in our app. So that's 1334 by 750 px. Or you can actually take the crop tool, switch to the width, height, and resolution up here. And I know I want it to be 1334 pixels. Make sure you put pixels or else it'll try to do inches. And then I can put 750 px here. And no matter what I do for this kind of crop area here, it is going to automatically make it 1334 by 750. So I can kind of adjust it the way I want it to go here. And if this is the way that I like the picture to look, then I can hit enter or return to commit that crop. And once it's committed that crop, even though it looks super tiny, and my program's really kind of tall right now, it's going to look super tiny, but that's because it's at 16%. So if I do Command 0, you can see at 75%, so it's still not 100%. It's really good. And then we can go to File, Export, Save for Web. So even though it's not for the web, it's for Animate. Animate is creating digital media, and what we mean by save the web is save this image for digital media. So you can see its width and height is 1334 by 750, And we actually want to change this to JPEG because the only time you want to use ping is when there's transparency and there's not in here. So we'll just use JPEG. So with JPEG, I can change the quality. Right now it's at 214K, which is way smaller than the original almost 7 megabytes it used to be. So that's pretty good. But I can still probably go down to like 60 and look at the image quality, and it still looks really good. So I would keep pulling it down. Don't go all the way because then you can see it gets really pixelated. You don't want to do that. So bump it up until the quality and the file size kind of produce a nice balance. So I think that looks pretty good at 70. And we'll go ahead and hit save. And I'm going to call this coffee pot. I'm actually not a coffee drinker, so I don't know. So we'll go ahead and put this in chapter 3 and make sure that we save it as a JPEG. It's a really easy to read name. And then we can put that into our particular Flash project. So if you have a different image editor, you're going to follow pretty much the same steps. You're just going to have to find for that image editor where the crop tool is or how to resize the particular pixel dimensions. So anyway, now that image is able to be dragged into my project. But for right now, I don't actually want to use that image. I just wanted to show you that process. So again, when we come back in here, notice that all of the items for the home screen are on frame 1. So I can turn off the home image and see what that looks like. I can turn off the text on the home text layer and then turn this layer off so you can see what's on each of them. So make sure you also include a navigation system so somebody can understand how they would actually get into the app and use the app. So then on another frame, it could be frame 2, it can be frame 5, it can be frame 100, as long as it's not frame 1, because all the stuff for the home screen is on frame 1. So on frame 5, this is where we create the internal screen. So the internal screen, again, I chose to use another picture. You only have to use one picture, so you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You need to at least have 2 shapes. Notice I have a ton of shapes in mind, but the 2 shapes for the different go buttons would work perfectly for this. And then looking at the text, we use kind of a classic serif text, and it's smaller and it's all consistently designed. Same font, usually the same color. So the size has a hierarchy depending on what's important. So this is a little bit more important, so that's why it's bigger. If we go back here when we're looking at text, notice that the title is now a sans serif and it's much bigger, and it's been designed to kind of be more stylized instead of just a plain old the beam predictor and straight centered text with the same size. But we can tell with the hierarchy that this is the title because it's bigger. It's kind of this asymmetrical layout. And then we have this same serif text that we use throughout the app used for the subtitle here. It has high contrast, it's easy to read, it looks appropriate for this audience. So that's something you need to consider when you're designing your mockup. Whoever your audience is, you must design for them. If your audience is primarily women, then it should be designed with them in mind. Vice versa, if it's primarily designed for men, it should be designed with them in mind. Kids, you should design it so that it looks more kid-like. So let's look at what that might look like. If we're looking at this particular app, we can see that it actually has 5 layers for the home screen. It's still all on the first frame. And this is where we're teaching little kids about shapes in the real world. So again, we see the navigation system, we see the use of different shapes, and we can tell the title from the subtitle because of the placement, the size. It's font that's easy to read for kids. It's friendlier font. It's more kiddish in nature. This font would look horrible on our coffee app. So if we then go to frame 5, which is where all the internal screen stuff happens, we can see the use of the picture in here. We can see how this would work with the navigation system here. And notice because we're designing for kids, we have bright primary colors, we have a fun font, we have really big, easy to click buttons. So again, we're keeping all that stuff in mind depending on the audience. So when you create yours, make sure that you are creating your mockup with the audience in mind, that you're creating a mockup that makes sense for what this app is. If I can't tell what this app is or does after looking at it, then that's a problem with the actual design or the concept. All right, so when you are done with your particular assignment, you need to actually export it. And this time I don't need a Swift file because there's no animation, but I will need the original Flash file, and that you can see here in your project folder. You don't need to send me all the JPEGs that you kind of cropped or downloaded from Unsplash, whatever it may be. You don't have to send me any of that kind of stuff. And I don't know why that recovery came up, but anyway, if I go ahead and save this project, that's going to save that Flash file. And we need to create an exported JPEG of the first frame and whatever frame your internal screen is on. So mine is on frame 5. So in order to do this, I'll move my playhead to frame 1 and then go to File, Export, Image. And then it's going to say, where do you want to save this? So again, I'm going to choose my class folder in this particular project and hit Save. So I can do App, Mockup, Coffee, and then I can say like home screen at the very end. So I can type home and hit save. And then it's going to say, okay, how big do you want it? Here's the width, here's the height. That's the actual height of the height and width of the stage, so that's fine. Resolution, let's leave it at 72 because you're sending this to me as a digital file. I don't need to print it for any reason. So if these settings aren't correct, then you can always hit match screen. It'll absolutely match the stage size and screen size that you have set up for your assignment. And then you want to include the full document size, not this option. So choose full document size, make sure it's 100% quality, and then click OK. So that's going to create that home image. So if I go ahead and preview that, let's go ahead and open it up in preview. This gives me an exported JPEG of your home screen. So we'll do the same thing with the internal screen. We'll go to frame 5, File, Export, Image, and make sure at the end of this, we call this internal because we can't have them both with the same name. And again, we want to match the screen size, full document, 100 quality, and click OK. So basically, I don't actually need any of these original JPEG files, but you can give me the cropped one if you want to, just not these massive 6.7 megabyte files because it's going to take forever for you to upload those and forever for me to download them. So I'll move those to the trash or move them to a different folder. And again, this is all I need for this assignment, the Flash file, the internal JPEG, and the home JPEG. So go back to the original project folder, right click and compress it. Again, PC, you'll have to go to send to and then choose compressed zip folder. Rename this so it has my last name, chapter 3, and then turn that zip file in to the Dropbox.